Ungrateful woman kicked out her old mother to a resting home, not knowing she had millions. The apartment felt like a pressure cooker about to explode. Jenna Martinez pressed her palms against her temples, willing the headache to go away, but the chaos around her made it impossible. 8-year-old Tyler was sprawled across the living room floor, his tablet blaring some mindless cartoon at full volume. 6-year-old Sophie sat at the wobbly kitchen table, tears streaming down her face as she struggled with her homework. "Mommy, I don't understand this math," Sophie wailed, her pencil scratching frantically across the paper. Just, just figure it out, baby," Jenna muttered, her eyes glued to her phone screen. 3 missed calls from her boss, 2 angry texts from the daycare about late pickup fees, and a stack of bills on the counter that seemed to multiply every time she looked away. That's when she heard it, the gentle humming from the kitchen. Her mother, Elaine, moving quietly around the cramped space, stirring something on the stove that actually smelled like home. At 68, Elaine still moved with purpose, her silver hair neatly pinned back, her faded apron tied snug around her waist. She'd been doing this dance for years now, keeping the family afloat while Jenna tried to juggle work, bills, and 2 growing children. But today, that familiar humming felt like nails on a chalkboard. "Tyler, turn that thing down," Jenna snapped, her voice sharper than she intended. The little boy looked up with wounded eyes, and Jenna felt the familiar stab of guilt. She was always snapping, always stressed, always one crisis away from a complete breakdown. "Dinner's almost ready," Elaine called softly from the kitchen. "I made that chicken stew you used to love when you were little." Used to love. Past tense. Because when was the last time Jenna had actually tasted her food? Really tasted it? Lately, everything felt mechanical. Rushed. Like she was just going through the motions of living while life happened around her. Jenna's phone buzzed again. Another text from her boss. "Need to talk Monday. Your numbers are down." Her heart sank. She couldn't afford to lose this job. Not with Christmas coming. Not with Tyler needing new shoes and Sophie's glasses getting thicker every year. The walls of the tiny 2-bedroom apartment seemed to close in around her, and suddenly she couldn't breathe. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered to herself, but the words came out louder than she meant. Elaine appeared in the doorway, wooden spoon in hand, concern etched across her weathered face. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" And that was it. That was the moment something inside Jenna snapped. Not the gentle concern in her mother's voice, but the way it highlighted everything that was wrong with her life. Here was this woman, this elderly woman, taking care of everything while Jenna, at 34, felt like she was drowning in her own existence. "Nothing's wrong," Jenna said, her voice cold. "Everything's perfect. Just perfect." Elaine's eyes flickered with hurt, but she turned back to the kitchen without another word. She'd learned, over the years, when to push and when to retreat. Tonight was clearly a retreat night. But Jenna wasn't done. The pressure in her chest was building, and she needed somewhere to put it. She followed her mother into the kitchen, watching as Elaine ladled the stew into mismatched bowls, the same bowls they'd been using since Jenna was Tyler's age. "You know what, Mom?" Jenna's voice was quiet, deadly quiet. "I've been thinking." Elaine paused, the ladle halfway to another bowl. Something in her daughter's tone made her stomach clench. "About what, honey?" "About you. About this." Jenna gestured around the cramped kitchen, at the yellowing wallpaper and the dishes that never seemed to stay clean for more than 5 minutes. "About how long you've been here." "I've been here as long as you've needed me," Elaine said carefully. She set the ladle down and turned to face her daughter fully. In the harsh fluorescent light, Jenna could see every line on her mother's face, every year that had passed since Dad died and left them to figure things out together. "That's just it, though." Jenna's voice was getting stronger now, fueled by frustration and exhaustion and a deep, ugly resentment she'd been carrying for months. "I don't need you anymore. The kids are older now. I can handle things." Elaine blinked slowly, as if she hadn't heard correctly. "Handle things?" "Yes, handle things. Like a grown-up. Like someone who doesn't need her 68-year-old mother cooking and cleaning and babysitting." The words came out in a rush, each one a small betrayal. "You've done your part, Mom. You raised me. You helped me get back on my feet after Marcus left. You've been amazing." But the silence stretched between them like a chasm. From the living room came the sounds of Tyler's cartoon and Sophie's sniffling as she erased another wrong answer. But Elaine's voice was barely a whisper. Jenna couldn't look at her mother's face. Instead, she stared at the pot of stew, still steaming on the stove. But it's time you rested. Really rested. There's this place, Sunny Meadows. It's nice. Really nice. They have activities and other people your age and you want to put me in a home. It wasn't a question. The words hung in the air like smoke, filling up all the spaces between them. Jenna finally looked up to meet her mother's eyes, expecting anger or tears or some kind of fight. Instead, she saw something much worse, acceptance. I want what's best for both of us, Jenna said. But even she could hear how hollow it sounded. You deserve to have your own life. To not worry about us all the time. Elaine nodded slowly, her hands folding together in front of her apron. I see. Do you? Because I feel like I'm suffocating here, Mom. I feel like I can't breathe, and I can't figure out who I am when you're always. Jenna stopped herself, but the damage was done. When I'm always what? When you're always here. Always taking care of everything. Always being perfect. The confession came out ugly and raw. I can't compete with you. My own kids love you more than they love me because you're the one who has time for homework and bedtime stories. And I'm just the mean one who yells about getting ready for school. Elaine was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, but Jenna could hear the tremor underneath. I never wanted to compete with you, sweetheart. I just wanted to help. I know. I know you did. And you have. God, you have. But I need to do this on my own now. I need to figure out how to be their mother without you doing all the hard parts. It was the closest thing to honesty Jenna had managed in months, but it felt like swallowing glass. Because the truth was messier than that. The truth was that she resented her mother's competence, her patience, her ability to make everything look easy when Jenna felt like she was failing at every turn. Elaine untied her apron with hands that only shook slightly. She folded it carefully and placed it on the counter next to the pot of stew that would probably go cold now. When? She asked simply. When what? When would you like me to go? The question hit Jenna like a slap. She'd expected more of a fight. Tears, maybe. Guilt trips about abandoning family. Instead, her mother was already mentally packing, already stepping back from the life they'd built together in this cramped apartment. I called them today. They have an opening next week. Elaine nodded again. Next week. That's soon. Mom, Jenna started, but she didn't know how to finish. Sorry felt too small. Thank you felt too dismissive. I love you felt too complicated when she was asking her to leave. I'll start getting my things together, Elaine said quietly. She moved toward the stove and turned off the heat under the stew. You should feed the children. They're hungry. And then she was gone, disappearing into the small bedroom she'd claimed when she first moved in 5 years ago. Jenna stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the smell of home-cooked food she hadn't made and the echoes of words she couldn't take back. From the living room, Sophie called out, Is Grandma okay? I heard voices. Jenna closed her eyes and tried to find her voice. Everything's fine, baby. Come eat dinner. But as she ladled the stew into bowls with hands that shook worse than her mother's had, Jenna knew that nothing would ever be fine again. She'd just crossed a line she didn't even know existed. And the worst part was the tiny, shameful part of her that felt relieved. Finally, she could breathe, even if the air tasted like regret. The next week passed in a strange, suspended silence. Elaine moved through the apartment like a ghost preparing for her own departure, packing her belongings with the same quiet efficiency she'd brought to everything else. She didn't make a big production of it. No dramatic sighs or pointed comments about being unwanted. She simply prepared. Jenna watched from the corners of her eyes, pretending to be busy with work emails or household tasks, but really cataloging every moment. The way her mother carefully wrapped each of her few treasures in tissue paper. The way she sorted through 5 years' worth of accumulated memories, deciding what was worth keeping and what could be left behind. Mommy, why is Grandma putting her clothes in boxes? Sophie asked on Thursday evening. She stood in the doorway of Elaine's room, her small face pinched with confusion. Jenna's throat tightened. Grandma's going to live somewhere new, baby. Somewhere with other grandmas and grandpas. But why? Tyler appeared beside his sister, his tablet forgotten for once. Did we do something bad? The question hit Jenna like a physical blow. She knelt down to their level, trying to find words that wouldn't scar them the way her own words had clearly scarred her mother. No, sweethearts. You didn't do anything bad. Grandma she wants to try something new. It was a lie, and even the kids seemed to sense it. They exchanged one of those looks that children share when the adults in their lives aren't telling the truth. Can we visit her? Sophie asked, her bottom lip trembling. Of course you can visit. Elaine's voice came from inside the bedroom. She appeared in the doorway, a gentle smile on her face despite the sadness in her eyes. Anytime you want. And I'll call you every day if your mommy says it's okay. Both children launched themselves at their grandmother, wrapping their small arms around her waist. Elaine held them close, and Jenna saw her mother's face crumple for just a moment before she composed herself again. I'm going to miss you both so much, Elaine whispered into their hair. But you're going to be brave, aren't you? You're going to help mommy and be good for her. They nodded against her, and Jenna felt something crack inside her chest. This was really happening. She was really sending away the one person who had never abandoned her, never judged her, never made her feel like she wasn't enough. So why did it feel like the right thing to do? The answer came to her as she watched her mother comfort her children with the same patience and love she'd shown Jenna her entire life. Because Jenna was tired of being the broken one, tired of being the one who needed comforting. She wanted to be the mother her children deserved, not the stressed-out mess who relied on Grandma to pick up the pieces. Sunday arrived gray and drizzly, matching Jenna's mood perfectly. The car from Sunny Meadows was scheduled to arrive at 2 o'clock. Elaine had insisted on handling the transportation herself, not wanting to burden Jenna with the drive. I can take you, Jenna had offered half-heartedly the night before. That's all right, sweetheart. I think it might be easier this way. Easier for whom? Jenna wondered, but she didn't ask. By 1:30, Elaine's entire life was packed into 2 modest suitcases and a small box of personal items. 68 years of living, reduced to 3 containers that could fit in the trunk of a sedan. She sat in the living room with Tyler and Sophie on either side of her, reading them one last story from the worn copy of The Giving Tree that had been Jenna's favorite as a child. Her voice was steady, but Jenna could see the way her mother's hands trembled slightly as she turned each page. Jenna busied herself in the kitchen, wiping down counters that were already clean, organizing cabinets that didn't need organizing. Anything to avoid sitting in that living room and facing what she'd done. At exactly 2 o'clock, a silver sedan pulled up outside their building. Jenna watched from the window as a middle-aged woman in a navy blue cardigan got out and checked the address against a piece of paper in her hand. They're here, Jenna called softly. The reading stopped. Sophie began to cry, not the dramatic wailing of a child's tantrum, but the quiet, heartbroken tears of someone who understood that something precious was being taken away. Elaine closed the book and kissed each of her grandchildren's heads. Remember what we talked about, she told them. Be good for mommy. Help her around the house. And call me tonight before bed, okay? They nodded through their tears, and Jenna felt her own eyes burning. She blinked rapidly, refusing to cry. This was her choice. She needed to be strong about it. The knock at the door came soft and polite. Jenna opened it to find a woman about her own age with kind eyes and a warm smile. Mrs. Rivera? I'm Sarah from Sunny Meadows. I'm here to help Mrs. Patterson with her transition. Mrs. Patterson. It took Jenna a moment to realize the woman was talking about her mother. Elaine had gone back to her maiden name after Dad died, but Jenna still thought of her as Mom, not Mrs. Patterson. She's ready, Jenna said, stepping aside to let Sarah in. Elaine rose from the couch with dignity, smoothing down her best dress, the navy blue one she wore to church on Sundays. She hugged Tyler and Sophie one more time, whispering something to each of them that made them nod solemnly. Then she turned to Jenna. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Mother and daughter. 2 women who had been through everything together. Divorce, financial struggles, sleepless nights with sick children, holidays stretched thin on love and hope when money ran out. Thank you, Elaine said simply, for letting me be part of their lives. For letting me help. The words were like knives. Jenna opened her mouth to say something. Anything that might make this moment less awful, but nothing came out. Elaine stepped forward and wrapped her arms around her daughter. She smelled like the lavender soap she'd used for as long as Jenna could remember, and vanilla from the cookies she'd baked yesterday as a goodbye treat for the children. I love you, sweetheart, she whispered against Jenna's ear. I hope you find what you're looking for. Jenna's arms came up automatically to return the hug, and for a moment she was 8 years old again, crying because kids at school had made fun of her hand-me-down clothes. Her mother had held her just like this, stroking her hair and promising that everything would be okay. But Jenna wasn't 8 anymore, and she was the one making the choices now. "I love you too, Mom," she managed to whisper back. Elaine pulled away first, her eyes bright with unshed tears, but her smile genuine. "You're going to be wonderful," she said. "You already are." Sarah helped carry Elaine's bags to the car while the children pressed their faces against the living room window. Jenna stood in the doorway, watching her mother settle into the passenger seat with the same grace she brought to everything else. The car pulled away from the curb at exactly 2:17 p.m. Jenna had checked the clock without meaning to, as if she needed to mark the exact moment her life changed forever. She stood in the doorway long after the silver sedan disappeared around the corner, listening to her children's quiet sniffles and the sound of her own heart beating too fast in her chest. Finally, she closed the door and turned to face her new reality. The apartment felt different already. Bigger, somehow, but also empty in a way that had nothing to do with physical space. "Mommy." Sophie's voice was small and uncertain. "What's for dinner?" Jenna looked at her daughter's tear-stained face and realized she had no idea. For 5 years, Elaine had handled dinner. Breakfast too, most mornings. And lunch on weekends. And snacks. And just about everything else that kept the household running smoothly. "I'll figure something out," Jenna said, hoping she sounded more confident than she felt. But as she stood in the middle of her quiet apartment, surrounded by the echoes of her mother's absence, Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. The only question was whether she'd realize it in time to fix it. 3 weeks after Elaine left, Jenna was drowning. It started with small things. Burnt toast because she'd forgotten the setting. Tyler wearing the same shirt 3 days in a row because laundry had somehow become an insurmountable mountain of fabric and detergent that mocked her from the corner of her bedroom. Sophie crying herself to sleep because there was no one to read her bedtime stories. Jenna fell asleep during the second page of Goodnight Moon, after her 14th straight hour of juggling work, housework, and 2 confused, grieving children. "Mommy looks tired all the time now," she overheard Sophie whisper to Tyler one morning as they ate cereal for breakfast again. It was the 3rd time that week. "Maybe Grandma will come back soon," Tyler whispered back. Jenna pretended not to hear as she searched frantically for her car keys, already running late for work. Again, her boss, Mr. Henderson, had stopped being understanding about her tardiness somewhere around day 10 of her new solo parenting adventure. The apartment felt like it was actively working against her. Dishes multiplied overnight. Toys appeared in impossible places. The laundry basket seemed to be some kind of portal that generated dirty clothes faster than she could wash them. But the worst part wasn't the chaos. It was the silence. No more humming from the kitchen. No more gentle voice reading stories before bed. No more patient explanations of homework problems or creative solutions to childhood crises. The apartment had been small with 4 people, but with 3, it felt cavernous and cold. Jenna found herself standing in her mother's empty bedroom sometimes, just breathing in the faint scent of lavender that still clung to the walls. Elaine had left the room spotless, of course. Bed made with hospital corners, windows cleaned to sparkling, not a speck of dust anywhere. It was as if she'd never been there at all, except for the hollow ache in Jenna's chest that grew stronger every day. She'd called Sunny Meadows twice in 3 weeks. Both times, she'd hung up before anyone could answer. What would she say? That she'd made a mistake? That she needed her mother back? That she was failing at the one thing she'd been so determined to prove she could handle alone? The 3rd week brought a new low. Tyler got sent home from school with a fever, and Jenna had to leave work early. Again, Mr. Henderson's face when she knocked on his office door was a masterpiece of barely controlled frustration. "This is becoming a pattern, Jenna," he said, not looking up from his computer screen. "I understand you have children, but we need reliable employees." "I know, Mr. Henderson. I'm sorry. It won't happen again." But they both knew it might. Without Elaine there to handle the inevitable childhood illnesses and school emergencies, Jenna was constantly walking a tightrope between being a mother and keeping her job. She picked up Tyler from the school nurse, who gave her a look that clearly said, "This child should have stayed home today." His fever was 101.2, and he looked miserable huddled in the oversized school sweater someone had wrapped around him. "I want Grandma," he mumbled as Jenna buckled him into his car seat. "Grandma makes the good soup when I'm sick." Jenna's throat tightened. I'll make you soup, buddy. But not the good kind. It was an innocent comment from a 6, 7-year-old, but it hit Jenna like a physical blow. He was right. She didn't know how to make the good soup. She didn't know most of the little tricks and comfort measures that had made Elaine so essential to their daily lives. That evening, while Tyler slept fitfully with a cool washcloth on his forehead and Sophie tried to help by bringing him her favorite stuffed animal, Jenna sat at the kitchen table with her laptop and tried to work. The monthly reports were due tomorrow, and she was barely halfway through them. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hi, sweetheart. It's Mom. I got a phone. The nice lady here helped me set it up. How are my babies? Give them hugs from Grandma." Jenna stared at the message for a full minute, her vision blurring. Her mother had learned to text. At 68, in a nursing home, surrounded by strangers, she'd learned to text so she could stay connected to the grandchildren who missed her desperately. She started typing a response 3 different times and deleted each one. What could she say? That everything was falling apart without her? That she'd been wrong about needing space? That she missed the sound of humming in the kitchen more than she'd ever missed anything in her life? Instead, she wrote, "Kids are good. Tyler has a fever, but he's okay. They miss you." The response came back almost immediately. "Poor baby. Give him ginger tea with honey and a story. Sophie needs extra hugs when her brother is sick. She worries. You're doing great, sweetheart. I'm proud of you." Jenna burst into tears right there at the kitchen table, her laptop screen blurring through her sobs. Even from a distance, even after being sent away, her mother was still taking care of them, still offering gentle guidance and encouragement, still being the mother Jenna had never learned how to be. She was still crying when Sophie padded into the kitchen in her pajamas, dragging her blanket behind her. "Mommy, are you sad about Grandma too?" Jenna wiped her eyes and pulled her daughter onto her lap. Sophie smelled like strawberry shampoo in childhood, and Jenna held her close, breathing in the sweetness of her. "Yeah, baby. I'm sad about Grandma too. Can we call her?" Jenna almost said no. It was late, and she wasn't sure she could handle hearing her mother's voice without completely falling apart. But Sophie's hopeful face broke down her resistance. "Okay, but just for a few minutes." She dialed the number from the text, and after 2 rings, she heard the voice that had been the soundtrack of her entire childhood. "Jenna? Oh, sweetheart, is everything okay?" Even now, even after being banished to a nursing home, her first concern was for Jenna and her children. "We're fine, Mom." Sophie wanted to say hi. "Grandma." Sophie practically shouted into the phone. "I miss you so much. Tyler's sick and Mommy's been crying, and everything's different without you." Out of the mouths of babes, Jenna closed her eyes and tried not to crumble completely. "Oh, my sweet girl." Elaine's voice was warm and soothing even through the phone speaker. "Tell me about school. Are you still reading those chapter books we started?" For the next 10 minutes, Sophie chattered about her day, her friends, her worries about Tyler. Elaine listened with the patience of a saint, asking questions and making encouraging sounds in all the right places. When Tyler shuffled into the kitchen, still wrapped in his blanket and looking pitiful, Sophie thrust the phone at him. "It's Grandma. Grandma." His voice was hoarse from fever, but it perked up immediately. "I'm sick. I have the hot forehead." Elaine's gentle laugh filled the kitchen. "The hot forehead is no fun at all. Are you drinking lots of water? And did Mommy make you soup?" Tyler glanced at Jenna, then whispered conspiratorially into the phone. "She made the canned kind. Not the good kind like you make." Another stab to Jenna's heart. She was failing at soup. How pathetic was that? "The canned kind is perfectly good when you're not feeling well," Elaine said diplomatically. "But maybe I can tell Mommy my secret ingredient for next time." "Mommy, Grandma wants to tell you about soup." Tyler handed her the phone with the seriousness of someone delivering state secrets. "Mom, you don't have to. It's just a little ginger and honey in the broth," Elaine said quietly. "And read him the sick day book. It's on the shelf in his room. The blue one." Of course there was a specific book for sick days. Of course Elaine had thought of everything. "Mom, Jenna started, but she didn't know how to finish. "I'm sorry felt too small. I need you felt too vulnerable. I made a terrible mistake felt too late." "You're doing wonderfully, sweetheart," Elaine said gently. "Being a mother is the hardest job in the world. You're learning, and that's okay." But Jenna didn't feel like she was learning. She felt like she was drowning, and the one person who could throw her a lifeline was trapped in a nursing home because of Jenna's own stubborn pride. After they hung up, both children seemed calmer. Sophie went back to bed without her usual protests, and Tyler actually smiled when Jenna tucked him in with the blue book Elaine had recommended. But as Jenna lay in her own bed that night, staring at the ceiling and listening to the unfamiliar sounds of an apartment without her mother's presence, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd lost something precious. Something irreplaceable. Something she might never get back. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know as she finally drifted off to an exhausted sleep, was that 60 miles away in a comfortable room at Sunny Meadows, her mother was staring at her own ceiling and thinking about the bank statements hidden in her jewelry box. The ones that showed balances with more zeros than Jenna had ever imagined. Elaine had never told her daughter about the inheritance from her own father, had never mentioned the stocks and bonds and rental properties that had been quietly growing in value for decades. She'd lived simply, spending only what she needed, saving the rest for a future that had always seemed uncertain. But now, lying alone in a single bed in a room that smelled like industrial disinfectant instead of lavender and vanilla, Elaine was beginning to think about that future differently. Maybe it was time to stop saving. Maybe it was time to start giving. Maybe it was time to show her daughter that love wasn't just about being needed. Sometimes it was about being worthy of choice. 2 months into her new life at Sunny Meadows, Elaine had become something of a mystery to the staff. Most residents fell into predictable patterns: the complainers, the quiet ones, the social butterflies, the loners. But Elaine Patterson was different. She was gracious but private, friendly but reserved, and she had a way of appearing whenever someone needed help that felt almost magical. "Mrs. Patterson, you have another visitor," announced Carol, the weekend nurse, poking her head into Elaine's room where she sat reading by the window. Elaine looked up in surprise. It was Saturday afternoon, and she wasn't expecting anyone. Jenna had been too busy to visit since that first awkward week, and the children's calls had become less frequent as they adjusted to their new routine. "A visitor? Are you sure? Young man from the Herald. Says he's doing a story about our residents. Something about community connections." Elaine's stomach fluttered with anxiety. She'd been very careful to keep a low profile since arriving at Sunny Meadows. The last thing she wanted was attention, especially the kind that might reveal details about her financial situation that she wasn't ready to share. "I really don't think." "Oh, come on, Mrs. Patterson. You've done so much around here already. The reading corner you funded for the children's wing? The new garden? That scholarship program you set up? People deserve to know about the good you're doing." Elaine closed her eyes. She'd hoped her contributions would remain anonymous, but it seemed that was impossible in a place where everyone knew everyone else's business. 20 minutes later, she found herself sitting across from Jake Morrison, a earnest young reporter with kind eyes and a digital recorder between them on the small table in the sunroom. "I have to be honest, Mrs. Patterson," Jake said, consulting his notes. "When I started looking into the recent donations to various local charities, your name kept coming up. But when I tried to research your background, I couldn't find much. It's like you appeared out of nowhere 6 months ago and started changing lives." "I prefer to keep my private life private," Elaine said carefully. "The work speaks for itself." "It certainly does. Let's see." Jake flipped through his notebook. "You've funded 3 new reading corners in local foster homes, established a scholarship program for single mothers pursuing nursing degrees, sponsored a support group for widows, and single-handedly paid for the new therapeutic garden here at Sunny Meadows. That's over $200,000 in documented donations in just 8 weeks. The number hung in the air between them. Elaine shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "I've been blessed with resources," she said simply. "It seems only right to share them. Most people with that kind of money don't end up in nursing homes," Jake said gently. "Forgive me for being direct, but I'm curious about your story." Elaine was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the garden she'd paid to have installed. Children from the pediatric wing came out there sometimes with their parents, and she loved watching them discover the butterfly bushes and the fairy houses hidden among the flowers. "My father was a very practical man," she said finally. "He believed in working hard and living below your means. When he passed, he left me more than I ever expected. But money without love is just paper, Mr. Morrison. I spent 40 years married to a wonderful man who taught me that the richest people are the ones who have family to love and who love them back." "And your family?" The question hit like a physical blow, but Elaine kept her composure. My husband passed 5 years ago. My daughter, she has her own life now, her own family to take care of. Jake seemed to sense the pain beneath her calm words. That must be difficult. Being a parent means wanting what's best for your children, even when what's best for them isn't what's best for you. Elaine's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she folded them in her lap. My daughter needed space to find her own way, so I gave it to her. By moving here. By moving here and finding new ways to make a difference. There are a lot of people in this world who need help, Mr. Morrison. If I can't take care of my own family, at least I can take care of someone else's. They talked for another 30 minutes about her various charitable projects, and Jake was clearly moved by the quiet passion she brought to describing the scholarship recipients and the children who played in her garden. But Elaine could see the wheels turning in his mind, the way he kept coming back to the central mystery of who she really was. One last question, he said as he packed up his recorder. Is there anything you'd want people to know about you? Anything you'd want your family to know if they were reading this? Elaine was quiet for so long that Jake started to think she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I'd want them to know that loving someone doesn't mean needing them to need you. Sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go, even when it breaks your heart. And I'd want them to know that money can't buy happiness, but it can buy opportunities to make other people happy. That's worth more than all the bank statements in the world. Jake published his article the following Wednesday. It was a small piece, buried on page 6 of the local section, with the headline, The Quiet Millionaire Grandma. He'd managed to respect Elaine's privacy while still capturing the essence of her generosity and the mystery that surrounded her. Most people probably skipped right past it. It wasn't breaking news or celebrity gossip or anything that would grab attention in a busy world full of more pressing concerns. But Jenna saw it. She was grabbing coffee at the diner near her office, scrolling through the local news on her phone while she waited for her order, when the headline caught her eye. Something about the phrase "quiet millionaire grandma" made her stomach clench with an inexplicable dread. She almost didn't click on it, almost scrolled past to check her work emails instead. But something, intuition, maybe, or just the sick feeling that had been growing in her chest for weeks, made her tap the link. The photograph loaded first. A small, grainy image of an elderly woman sitting in a garden, her silver hair catching the sunlight, her hands folded peacefully in her lap. The woman looked familiar, but it wasn't until Jenna read the caption that her world tilted sideways. Elaine Patterson, 68, has donated over $200,000 to local charities since moving to Sunny Meadows Care Center 8 weeks ago. The coffee shop around Jenna disappeared. The morning chatter, the hiss of the espresso machine, the clatter of dishes, all of it faded into white noise as she stared at her mother's face on her phone screen. Her mother, the woman she'd sent away because she was a burden. The woman who had lived quietly in their cramped apartment, cooking meals from discount groceries and mending clothes instead of buying new ones. The woman who had never once mentioned having money. Real money, the kind of money that could change lives. With shaking fingers, Jenna read the article. Each sentence was like a physical blow. Patterson, who prefers to keep her background private, has been quietly funding reading programs, scholarships, and support groups throughout the community. When asked about her motivation for giving, Patterson spoke about the importance of family and the responsibility that comes with being blessed with resources. Money without love is just paper, Patterson explained. I spent 40 years married to a wonderful man who taught me that the richest people are the ones who have family to love and who love them back. The phone slipped from Jenna's nerveless fingers, clattering onto the small table. Around her, life continued as normal. People ordered their morning coffee, checked their phones, complained about the weather. But Jenna felt like she was falling through space, everything she thought she knew about her life crumbling around her. Her mother was rich. Not comfortable, not getting by, rich. Rich enough to donate $200,000 in 2 months like it was nothing. Rich enough to fund scholarships and gardens and reading programs while living in a nursing home because her own daughter had thrown her away. Ma'am, your order's ready. The barista's voice seemed to come from very far away. Jenna looked up to see the young woman holding a coffee cup, concern creasing her features. Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. A ghost? Yes, that was exactly what it felt like. The ghost of the mother she thought she knew, replaced by this stranger who had been living a secret life right under Jenna's nose. Jenna grabbed her coffee with hands that wouldn't stop shaking and stumbled out of the diner. She sat in her car for 20 minutes, reading and rereading the article, trying to make sense of what she'd discovered. All those years of struggle, all those nights when she'd lain awake worrying about bills, about Tyler's shoes that were too small, about Sophie's glasses they couldn't afford to replace. All those times she'd felt like a failure because she couldn't provide for her children the way she wanted to. And her mother had been sitting there the whole time, capable of solving every financial worry with a single phone call. But she hadn't. She'd watched Jenna struggle, had helped with cooking and cleaning and childcare, but had never once offered the kind of help that could actually change their circumstances. Why? The question burned in Jenna's chest as she drove to work in a daze. Why would her mother hide this from her? Why would she let Jenna feel like such a failure when she had the power to fix everything? By the time she reached her office, shock was crystallizing into something harder and more familiar: anger. She made it through the morning on autopilot, responding to emails and attending meetings while her mind churned with questions and accusations. During her lunch break, she called Sunny Meadows. "I'd like to speak with Elaine Patterson, please. This is her daughter." There was a pause. "Oh, Mrs. Martinez. Your mother talks about you all the time. Let me transfer you to her room." 3 rings. 4. Then her mother's voice, warm and surprised. "Jenna? Sweetheart, what a lovely surprise. Is everything okay? Is everything okay?" Jenna's voice was deadly quiet. "I don't know, Mom. You tell me. Are the kids okay? Is Tyler's fever gone? Did Sophie finish her book report?" Yes, you said Tyler was feeling better when we talked yesterday. And Sophie mentioned the book report." "Sweetheart, you sound upset. What's wrong?" "What's wrong is that I just read a very interesting article in the Herald about a quiet millionaire grandma who's been throwing money around town like it's confetti." Silence. Long, heavy silence that confirmed everything Jenna had feared. "I see," Elaine said finally. "Do you? Do you really see?" Jenna's voice was rising, and she forced herself to lower it. She was at work, after all. "Because what I see is that my mother has been lying to me my entire adult life. What I see is that you've been sitting there watching me struggle to pay bills and buy groceries and keep a roof over our heads, and you've had millions of dollars the whole time. Jenna, don't. Just don't." Jenna closed her eyes, trying to contain the fury that was threatening to explode out of her. "How long? How long have you had this money?" "Since your grandfather passed." "About 15 years. 15 years. 15 years of watching Jenna work 2 jobs to make ends meet. 15 years of garage sale clothes and generic groceries and birthday parties with homemade cakes because store-bought was too expensive. And you never thought to mention it?" "Not once. I didn't want." "What? You didn't want what? To help your own daughter? To make sure your grandchildren had what they needed?" Elaine's voice was quiet when she answered. "I didn't want you to love me for my money instead of for who I am." The words hit Jenna like a slap. "Are you kidding me right now? You think I'm that shallow? You think I would have treated you differently if I'd known?" "I think money changes relationships," Elaine said carefully. "I've seen it happen. I've seen families torn apart by inheritance fights and people who were suddenly everyone's best friend once they came into money. I wanted you to need me because I was your mother, not because I could pay your bills." "Well, congratulations," Jenna said bitterly. "Mission accomplished. I needed you so much that I couldn't function without you. I was so dependent on you that I couldn't even figure out how to be a mother to my own children. And now I find out that the whole time, you could have given me the one thing that would have actually helped: financial security, but you were too selfish to do it." "Jenna, please. No, I'm done. I'm done with your games and your tests and your quiet martyrdom. You want to throw your money around on strangers? Fine. But don't pretend it's about love when you wouldn't even help your own family." Jenna hung up before her mother could respond. She sat in her car in the parking lot of her office building, shaking with rage and hurt and a grief so deep it felt like drowning. Her mother had betrayed her, not just by hiding the money, but by letting Jenna believe she was failing when success had been within reach the whole time. By making Jenna feel like a burden when she was the one sitting on millions of dollars. By making Jenna send her away when she could have stayed and actually helped. The worst part was the growing realization that maybe, if she'd known her mother had money, she wouldn't have felt so suffocated by her presence. Maybe if she'd felt like she had choices, like she wasn't trapped by necessity, She could have appreciated her mother's help instead of resenting it. But it was too late for maybes now. The damage was done, and Jenna didn't know if it could ever be repaired. What she didn't know, as she sat in her car nursing her anger and her broken heart, was that 60 miles away, her mother was packing a small bag with shaking hands. Inside each carefully folded garment, Elaine tucked envelopes containing bank statements, trust documents, and legal papers that would change her grandchildren's lives forever. She was going to fix this, even if it cost her everything. 3 days later, Elaine stood outside the apartment building that had been her home for 5 years, holding a small wrapped package and trying to work up the courage to ring the buzzer. It was Thursday afternoon, and she knew Jenna would be at work, but the children should be home from school by now. She'd taken a taxi from Sunny Meadows, telling the staff she was visiting an old friend. It wasn't entirely a lie. She was visiting old friends, the two smallest and most precious friends she'd ever had. The buzzer crackled when she pressed it, and Tyler's voice came through the speaker, high and excited. "Grandma? Grandma, is that really you? It's me, sweetheart. Can you buzz me up?" The door clicked open immediately, and Elaine climbed the familiar stairs to the second floor. Before she could even knock, the apartment door flew open and two small bodies launched themselves at her waist. "Grandma, Grandma, we missed you so much." Sophie's voice was muffled against Elaine's coat. "I missed you too, my loves," Elaine whispered, holding them close and breathing in the sweet scent of their hair. For a moment, she forgot about the painful phone call with Jenna, forgot about the secrets and the hurt and the complicated mess she'd made of everything. There were just her grandchildren, warm and solid and real in her arms. "Are you coming home?" Tyler asked, pulling back to look at her with hopeful eyes. "Please say you're coming home." Elaine's heart clenched. "I'm just visiting today, sweetheart, but I brought you something." She handed them the wrapped package, and they tore into it with the enthusiasm that only children could muster. Inside were two small teddy bears, beautifully crafted with soft brown fur and gentle expressions. "They're so soft," Sophie exclaimed, hugging hers to her chest. "I made them myself," Elaine said, settling onto the couch that still smelled faintly of the lavender sachets she used to tuck into the cushions. "There's something special about them. Can you feel it?" The children examined their bears carefully, running their small hands over the fur and the carefully stitched features. "There's something inside," Tyler said, pressing his hand to the bear's middle. "That's the special part," Elaine said gently. "But it's a secret for now. Something for you to discover when you're older. Can you keep them safe for me?" Both children nodded solemnly, clutching their bears like precious treasures. They spent the next hour catching up. Tyler showed her his latest art project, a drawing of their family that included Elaine, even though she wasn't living with them anymore. Sophie read her a story from her new chapter book, stumbling occasionally over difficult words but glowing with pride when Elaine praised her progress. It was perfect. It was home. It was everything Elaine had missed with a physical ache for the past 2.5 months. And then she heard the key in the lock. Jenna's face went through a series of emotions when she saw her mother sitting on the couch with the children. Surprise, confusion, and then a hardening into something cold and angry. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice carefully controlled. "Mommy, look. Grandma brought us bears." Sophie held up her teddy, oblivious to the tension crackling between the adults. "I can see that." Jenna's eyes fixed on Elaine's face. "Kids, go to your room for a few minutes. Grandma and I need to talk." "But we just got here," Tyler protested. "Now." Jenna's voice brooked no argument. The children reluctantly gathered their bears and headed to Tyler's room, casting worried glances over their shoulders. As soon as the door closed behind them, Jenna turned to face her mother fully. "I thought I made myself clear on the phone," she said quietly. "We're done." "Jenna, please. Let me explain." "Explain what?" "How you've been playing games with my life for 15 years. How you let me struggle and worry and feel like a complete failure when you could have helped at any time." Elaine rose from the couch, her hands clasped in front of her. "I never meant for you to feel like a failure. You're not a failure. You're a wonderful mother. Don't." Jenna held up a hand. "Don't you dare try to manage me right now. I am so angry I can barely see straight, and your platitudes aren't going to fix this." "Then what will? What can I do to make this right?" Jenna stared at her mother for a long moment, taking in the carefully pressed dress, the nervous way she twisted her wedding ring, the hope and fear warring in her eyes. I want to know why, Jenna said finally. I want to know why you thought it was okay to lie to me for 15 years. I want to know why you thought I didn't deserve to know that my own mother was wealthy. I want to know why you watched me work myself to death trying to provide for my children when you could have made all of our lives easier with a single check. Elaine sank back onto the couch, suddenly looking every one of her 68 years. Because I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid that if you knew about the money, that's all you'd see when you looked at me. Afraid that our relationship would become about what I could give you instead of who we were to each other. Elaine's voice was barely above a whisper. I grew up poor, Jenna. Really poor. And when your grandfather left me that inheritance, I saw how differently people treated me. Suddenly, I had friends I'd never met before. Suddenly, people were interested in my opinions, my time, my company. But I knew it wasn't really me they wanted. So you decided to lie to your own daughter instead? I decided to protect what we had. You never asked me for money, Jenna. Not once. When Marcus left, when you were struggling with 2 babies and no support, you never once asked me to solve your problems with a check. You asked me to help with the children. You asked me to stay and be part of your family. You needed me, not my bank account. Jenna felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. That's not fair. You don't get to make that choice for me. You don't get to decide what kind of person I am without giving me the chance to prove you wrong. You're right, Elaine said simply. I should have told you. I should have trusted you. I should have given you the choice. The admission hung in the air between them. Jenna had expected her mother to defend herself, to make excuses, to try to justify the deception. The quiet acceptance of responsibility was somehow worse than anger would have been. But that's not even the worst part, Jenna continued, her voice cracking. The worst part is that I sent you away thinking you were a burden. I sent away the one person who had never abandoned me, never judged me, never made me feel like I wasn't enough. And the whole time, you were the one doing us a favor by staying. No, Elaine said firmly. No, sweetheart, you have that backwards. Living here with you and the children, being part of your daily lives, it was the greatest gift you could have given me. When your father died, I thought my purpose was over. I thought I was just going to be one of those old women who fade away in nursing homes, forgotten and irrelevant. But you let me matter again. You let me be useful. You let me love those babies and be loved by them. Then why didn't you fight for it? Jenna's voice broke completely now, tears streaming down her face. When I told you to leave, why didn't you fight? Why didn't you tell me the truth then? Elaine was quiet for a long moment, her own eyes glistening with unshed tears. Because sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go, even when it breaks your heart. You said you needed space to figure out how to be their mother. How could I take that away from you? How could I use my money to manipulate you into letting me stay? You could have used it to help me succeed instead of just hovering and taking care of everything. You're right, Elaine said again. I was so focused on being needed that I forgot to help you grow. I was so afraid of being alone that I made myself indispensable instead of making you independent. I failed you in ways I never even realized. They sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of years of misunderstanding and hurt settling between them like a physical presence. Finally, Jenna spoke. The article said you've donated over $200,000 in 2 months. Yes. How much do you have? Elaine hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. After taxes and the donations? About $3.2 million. The number hit Jenna like a physical blow. $3.2 million. More money than she'd ever dreamed of having. More money than she could spend in a lifetime. Jesus, Mom. $3 million. I know it's a lot. I know it changes things. Changes things. Jenna laughed, but there was no humor in it. It changes everything. Do you know what I could do with that kind of money? Do you know how different my children's lives could be? I know, and I want to give it to you. All of it. Jenna's head snapped up. What? I want to give it to you. Not because you're asking for it, but because you're my daughter and I love you. Because Tyler and Sophie are my grandchildren and they deserve every opportunity in the world. Because you've been carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders for too long, and I have the power to lift it. I don't want your money, Jenna said automatically, but even as the words left her mouth, she could feel their hollowness. Yes, you do, Elaine said gently. And that's okay. It's okay to want security for your children. It's okay to want to not worry about bills and college tuition and medical emergencies. It's okay to want the freedom to choose your own path instead of being trapped by necessity. But if you give it to me now, How do I know it's not just guilt? How do I know you're not just trying to buy your way back into our lives? Elaine smiled sadly. You don't. You'll never know for sure. Just like I'll never know for sure if you love me for who I am or what I can provide. That's the risk we take when we choose to trust each other. From Tyler's room came the sound of muffled giggling and what sounded like a teddy bear tea party. Normal childhood sounds in the midst of their adult crisis. I can't forgive you, Jenna said quietly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. You stole 15 years of honesty from me. You stole the choice of knowing who my mother really was. I understand. But I also can't pretend that money wouldn't change our lives. Tyler needs tutoring in math. Sophie's vision is getting worse, and she needs expensive glasses. I haven't been to a dentist in 3 years because I can't afford it. My car is held together with duct tape and prayer. I know. So what happens now? Do you write me a check and we pretend this never happened? Do you go back to Sunny Meadows and we go back to our separate lives? Do you move back in and we try to pretend the last 3 months didn't happen? I don't know, Elaine admitted. I don't know what happens now. I only know that I love you and those children more than life itself, and I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions for me. Before Jenna could respond, Tyler's door opened and he peeked out, still clutching his teddy bear. Are you done fighting? He asked in a small voice. Because Sophie's crying and she wants to know if Grandma's going to leave again. Jenna looked at her son's worried face, then at her mother's hopeful one, and felt something shift inside her chest. Not forgiveness, that would take time, but maybe the beginning of a path forward. Come here, baby, she said to Tyler. Grandma's not leaving just yet. As Tyler ran to them and Sophie emerged from the bedroom with tear-stained cheeks, Jenna made a decision. She didn't know what the future would look like, but she knew she was tired of being angry, tired of being alone, tired of pretending she didn't need the one person who had never stopped loving her, even when she'd been too proud to accept it. The money would complicate everything. But maybe complicated was better than the alternative. Maybe complicated was worth fighting for. 2 months after the confrontation, Jenna stood in the basement of their apartment building, staring at a corner where boxes of Christmas decorations usually lived. Instead, she found herself looking at the two teddy bears her mother had made for the children, Tyler's brown bear and Sophie's matching one, both carefully preserved but forgotten in the chaos of the past few months. The relationship with her mother remained fragile, built on tentative phone calls and supervised visits that felt more like diplomatic negotiations than family gatherings. Elaine had moved back to her small assisted living apartment, but they were all trying to find a new normal that acknowledged both the hurt and the love that existed between them. The money sat untouched in a trust account that Elaine had established, waiting for Jenna to decide what she wanted to do with it. Some days, Jenna felt like she could never accept it. It felt too much like a bribe, a way to smooth over the years of deception. Other days, usually when Tyler needed new shoes or Sophie's glasses prescription changed again, the practical part of her wondered why she was being so stubborn about accepting help that could transform their lives. Today was one of those practical days. Sophie had come home from school with a permission slip for a field trip to the Science Museum, a trip that cost $60 per child, which might as well have been $600 for all the room it left in their stretched-thin budget. I don't have to go, Sophie had said quietly, seeing the way Jenna's face fell when she read the slip. Jessica says it's probably boring anyway. But Jenna had seen the way her daughter's eyes lit up when she talked about the planetarium show, and she'd promised to find a way to make it work, even if it meant eating ramen for a week. Now, standing in the basement, she found herself really looking at the teddy bears for the first time since her mother had given them to the children. They were beautiful work, the kind of careful craftsmanship that spoke of hours of patient attention. But there was something else about them, something that had been nagging at the back of her mind since that day. There's something special about them, her mother had said. Something for you to discover when you're older. Jenna picked up Tyler's bear, running her hands over the soft fur. There, right in the center of the bear's back, she could feel something firm and flat, like an envelope sewn into the stuffing. Her heart began to race as she carried both bears upstairs. The children were at school, and she had an hour before she needed to pick them up. An hour to solve the mystery her mother had left for them. She found her sewing scissors and carefully opened a small seam on the back of Tyler's bear. Inside, wrapped in waterproof plastic, was a sealed envelope with Tyler's name written in her mother's careful handwriting. Inside Sophie's bear, another envelope. This one had Sophie's name, and underneath it, in smaller print, "For college and dreams and whatever makes you happy." With shaking hands, Jenna opened Tyler's envelope first. Inside were legal documents establishing a trust fund in his name, bank statements showing a balance of $500,000, and a handwritten letter in her mother's familiar script. Sophie's envelope contained similar documents: another $500,000 trust, another letter full of love and hope and dreams for the future. But there was a third envelope, thin and sealed with wax, with Jenna's name written across it in bold letters. Inside was a single sheet of paper with just a few lines. "Jenna, I know you're angry. I know you feel betrayed. I know you think I should have told you about the money years ago, and you're right. But I also know that you would have refused it then, just like you're probably refusing it now. You would have seen it as charity, as a sign that you couldn't handle your own life. You would have let your pride get in the way of your children's futures. So I'm giving it to them instead, not as a bribe or an apology, but as a grandmother's right to spoil her grandchildren in the most practical way possible. The remaining $2 million is still yours if you want it. Not because you need it, but because you've earned it. Because you've been an amazing mother under impossible circumstances. Because you deserve the freedom to choose your own path instead of being trapped by necessity. But mostly because I love you, and I'm proud of you, and I want you to have every opportunity to be happy. Take it or leave it. The choice is yours. Love always, Mom. P.S. I'm not dead, despite what this letter might sound like. I just wanted to make sure you heard me, really heard me, without the noise of our hurt getting in the way." Jenna sat on her living room floor, surrounded by teddy bear stuffing and legal documents and the weight of her mother's love, and finally, let herself cry. Not the angry tears of betrayal or the bitter tears of resentment, but the deep, cleansing tears of grief and gratitude and overwhelming relief. Her children were provided for. Their futures were secure. The crushing weight of financial worry that had been her constant companion for years was lifting, and she could finally breathe. But more than that, she could finally see her mother clearly. Not as the perfect woman who made her feel inadequate, or the deceptive schemer who had hidden the truth, but as a complex, flawed, deeply loving person who had been trying to do her best in an impossible situation. The money had always been a tool, not a weapon. A way to show love, not to buy it. A bridge between them, not a wall. When the children came home from school that afternoon, they found their teddy bears carefully repaired and their mother sitting on the couch with an expression they hadn't seen in months. Pure, uncomplicated happiness. "Mom, you look different," Sophie said, dropping her backpack by the door. "I feel different," Jenna admitted. "Kids, how would you like to call Grandma and invite her over for dinner?" "Really?" Tyler's face lit up like Christmas morning. "She can come home? She's not moving back in," Jenna said carefully. "But maybe we can find a new way to be a family. One that's honest and healthy and good for all of us." As the children cheered and ran to find the phone, Jenna looked at the documents spread across her coffee table and made a decision. She would accept the money, not just for her children, but for herself. She would use it to build the life she'd always dreamed of but never thought possible. And she would start by doing something she should have done months ago. She would drive to Sunny Meadows and bring her mother home for a real conversation. Not as a guilty daughter or a defensive mother, but as two women who loved each other enough to fight through the mess they'd made and find their way back to each other. The phone rang as she was gathering up the papers. An unknown number, but something made her answer. "Jenna? It's Sarah from Sunny Meadows. I'm calling about your mother." Jenna's blood turned to ice. "What about her? Is she okay?" "Well, that's just it. She collapsed this morning during her morning walk. We rushed her to the hospital, but—" Sarah's voice trailed off. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Martinez. She didn't make it. The doctors said it was her heart. Very peaceful, very quick." The phone slipped from Jenna's fingers, clattering to the floor. Around her, the world went silent except for the sound of her own heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. Her mother was gone. The woman who had loved her unconditionally, who had tried to protect her even when protection felt like betrayal, who had spent her last months on Earth making sure her family would be provided for long after she was gone. Jenna would never get the chance to say she was sorry, would never get to tell her mother that she understood now, that she forgave her, that she loved her more than words could express. The children's voices from the kitchen seemed to come from another world. "Grandma? Grandma, are you there? Mommy wants to invite you to dinner." Jenna closed her eyes and tried to find the strength to tell them that Grandma couldn't come to dinner tonight. Or any night. Ever again. But then she heard something that made her heart stop completely. "Hello, my sweet babies." Her mother's voice, warm and familiar and impossible, coming from the kitchen where the children were talking on the phone. Jenna stumbled toward the sound, her legs barely holding her up. Tyler and Sophie were clustered around the phone, their faces bright with joy as they chattered about school and friends and the teddy bears that had been magically repaired. "Grandma, Mommy found the special things in our bears," Sophie was saying. There were letters and papers and lots of important stuff. Did she now? Elaine's voice was amused. And what did she think of the special things? She cried. Tyler reported matter-of-factly. But happy crying, I think. She said we could invite you to dinner. Well, that sounds wonderful. I'd love to come to dinner. Jenna sank into a kitchen chair, her whole body shaking. Mom? She whispered into the phone when Tyler handed it to her. Hello, sweetheart. I hear you've been having quite an afternoon. But Sarah called. From Sunny Meadows. She said you collapsed. She said you died. There was a pause, and then her mother's gentle laugh. Did she now? How odd. I'm feeling quite alive at the moment. I don't understand. Well, Elaine said carefully. I may have asked Sarah to make that call. Just to see. Well, to see how you'd feel about it. About me being gone. The truth hit Jenna like a physical blow. You faked your own death? I didn't fake anything. I just asked a friend to make a phone call. I wanted to know if you'd mourn me or be relieved that you didn't have to deal with me anymore. Jenna gripped the phone tighter, her emotions cycling between relief, fury, and disbelief. Mom, that's manipulative and cruel and completely wrong. Elaine interrupted quietly. I know. The moment Sarah made that call, I knew I'd made a terrible mistake. But I needed to know, Jenna. I needed to know if there was anything left to salvage between us. Jenna looked at her children, who were watching her with growing concern. Sophie had moved closer, her small hand reaching out to touch her mother's arm. Tyler stood frozen by the counter, sensing the gravity of something he didn't understand. And what did you learn? Jenna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. That you're a better person than I deserve, Elaine said, her voice thick with emotion. That even after everything I've done wrong, you still love me enough to grieve for me. That's more than I had any right to hope for. Jenna closed her eyes, feeling the last few months of pain and confusion crystallizing into something clearer. Mom, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I'm listening. I love you. I have always loved you. But if you ever, and I mean ever, manipulate me or my children again, we're done. Completely done. Do you understand me? There was a long pause. When Elaine spoke again, her voice was smaller, older. I understand. And I'm sorry. I've been handling this all wrong from the beginning. Yes, you have. Jenna's voice was firm, but not unkind. You've been treating me like a child who can't handle the truth instead of like the grown woman I am. You've been making decisions for me without asking what I wanted or needed. You're right. But I haven't been perfect either, Jenna continued, surprising herself with the admission. I've been so focused on being independent that I couldn't see when someone was trying to help me. I've been so afraid of being seen as weak that I pushed away someone who loves me. She looked at the documents scattered across her coffee table, the trusts, the letters, the evidence of her mother's careful planning and deep love. The money, she said finally. The trust for the kids. That was beautiful, Mom. Hiding it in the teddy bears so they'd find it when they were old enough to understand. That was love. I wanted them to have choices, Elaine said softly. The kind of choices I never had. The kind you've been denied because you had to be strong all the time. And the fake death call. Was me being a foolish old woman who was too scared to just ask her daughter if she still loved her. Jenna laughed, surprising herself. It was a sound caught between tears and genuine amusement. You know what? You are foolish. Wonderfully, terrifyingly, impossibly foolish. Does this mean I'm still invited to dinner? Jenna looked at her children, who had been following the conversation with the focused intensity of people listening to their favorite radio drama. Tyler was holding his repaired teddy bear, and Sophie was clutching hers to her chest. It means you're invited to a very long conversation, Jenna said. One where we tell each other the truth, even when it's hard. One where we figure out how to be a family without all the secrets and games and hurt feelings. I'd like that very much. And Mom. What? If you ever fake your own death again, I will actually kill you myself. Elaine's laugh was bright and genuine. Fair enough. I promise to stay alive and deal with my problems like a grown-up from now on. Good. Now, can you be here in an hour? We need to talk about college funds and field trip money and how to be honest with each other. I'll be there in 45 minutes. After Jenna hung up, she sat in her kitchen surrounded by the evidence of her mother's complicated love and her own complicated feelings about it. The money would change their lives. Sophie could go on every field trip, Tyler could play whatever sports he wanted, and Jenna could finally stop lying awake at night wondering how she'd pay for unexpected expenses. But more than that, they could finally be a real family again. Not perfect, not without problems, but honest and loving and willing to work through the hard parts together. Mommy, Sophie's voice was small. Is Grandma really okay? She's okay, baby. She made a mistake. A big one. But she's okay, and she's coming over so we can all talk about it. Are you still mad at her? Jenna considered the question carefully. I'm not mad anymore. I'm sad about some of the choices she made, and I'm going to make sure she understands that she can't make those kinds of choices again. But I'm not mad. Good, Tyler said firmly. I like it better when our family is together. Me too, Jenna admitted. Now, why don't you two go clean up your rooms before Grandma gets here? And think about what you want to tell her about the special things in your teddy bears. As the children ran upstairs, Jenna began preparing for the most important conversation of her adult life. She would accept the money, not just for her children, but for herself. She would use it to build a better life for all of them. But first, she would make sure her mother understood that love without honesty wasn't really love at all. And maybe, if they were all very lucky and very careful with each other, they could figure out how to be the family they'd always had the potential to be. When Elaine knocked on the door 43 minutes later, carrying a bouquet of flowers and wearing the nervous expression of someone who knew they had a lot of apologizing to do, Jenna was ready. Ready to forgive, ready to accept help, ready to build something new and honest and good from the complicated mess they'd made of loving each other. Hello, Mom, she said, opening the door wide. Come in. We have a lot to talk about. And for the first time in months, when Elaine crossed the threshold into their home, it felt like she was truly coming home. If you made it to the end, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. It truly means the world to us. See you in the next one.